He almost didn't answer the phone. The screen lit up with an unfamiliar number just as he finished putting his 6-year-old son to bed. Liam was already asleep, one small hand clutching the worn edge of his blanket, breathing softly in the quiet apartment. The day had been long. Double shifts at the warehouse, bills stacked neatly on the counter like accusations. He stared at the phone until it stopped ringing. Then it rang again. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Hi, is this Daniel?" A shaky voice asked. "Yes," he said cautiously. "This is Emily. I don't feel well. I shouldn't have drunk so much. I don't know who else to call." Daniel closed his eyes. Emily, his coworker. Bright smile, kind eyes, the kind of laugh that lingered longer than it should. She was younger than him, freer, untouched by the responsibilities that weighed him down. They'd talked during breaks, nothing more. "Where are you?" he asked. 20 minutes later, he found her sitting on the curb outside a small bar, head in her hands, mascara smudged by tears she hadn't noticed falling. When she looked up and saw him, relief washed over her face so completely it hurt to see. "I'm sorry," she whispered as he helped her into the car. "I didn't mean to be a problem." "You're not," he said gently, though he wasn't sure he believed that about himself anymore. She dozed in the passenger seat as he drove, murmuring apologies, thanking him between shallow breaths. He kept one eye on the road and one on her, heart heavy with a mix of concern and something dangerously close to attachment. When they finally stopped in front of her childhood home, the lights were still on. Daniel hesitated, wondering if he should carry her to the door or wake her mother. Before he could decide, the door opened. A woman stood there, mid-50s, hair streaked with gray, eyes sharp but tired. She took in the scene quickly. Her daughter barely conscious, the man holding her upright, his car old but clean, his expression more worried than guilty. "Thank you for bringing her home," the woman said calmly. "Of course," Daniel replied. "I just wanted to make sure she was safe." The woman helped Emily inside, settling her onto the couch with practiced hands. Then she turned back to Daniel, studying him in a way that made him shift uncomfortably. "It's late," she said. "You've driven a long way. Would he like to stay over?" Daniel blinked. "Oh, no, I couldn't. I have a son." "I know," she interrupted gently. "Emily talks about you, about how you always leave work early to pick him up, about how tired you look, but how kind you are anyway." Daniel didn't know what to say. "You can sleep on the couch," she added. "I'd rather you not drive exhausted." For reasons he couldn't fully explain, he nodded. That night, lying on a couch that smelled faintly of lavender and old memories, Daniel stared at the ceiling. He had no idea that this simple act of kindness, this unexpected invitation, was the first crack in the walls he'd built around his heart since his wife left. And he didn't know yet that Emily's mother, Sarah, had seen something in him that even he had forgotten existed. Daniel woke to the sound of soft footsteps and the smell of coffee. For a moment, he panicked, wondering where he was, why the ceiling looked unfamiliar. Then the night rushed back to him. Emily, the door, the offer. He sat up quickly, embarrassed. Sarah was already in the kitchen, pouring coffee into mismatched mugs. She handed him one without asking how he took it. "You didn't run," she said simply. He frowned. "Run, most men would have," she replied. Dropped her off, disappeared, never answered another call. Especially with a child involved. Daniel wrapped his hands around the mug, the warmth seeping into fingers that were always cold from warehouse work. "I know what it's like to be left when you need someone," he said quietly. Sarah studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded, as if confirming something to herself. Emily woke later that morning, pale and ashamed. When she saw Daniel still there, her eyes filled with tears. "You stayed, your mom insisted," he said with a small smile. They talked, really talked, for the first time. About his ex-wife who walked away when responsibility felt too heavy. About Emily's father who left when drinking became easier than parenting. About loneliness that didn't care how crowded a room was. Over the weeks that followed, Daniel found himself visiting more often. Sometimes just for dinner, sometimes to fix a leaky faucet, sometimes because Emily needed someone who didn't judge her mistakes. Sarah watched it all quietly. One evening, as Daniel prepared to leave, she stopped him at the door. "You know," she said, "my daughter has spent her whole life believing she was too much for people to stay. And you keep showing up." Daniel swallowed hard. "I'm not perfect." "No," she agreed, "but you're present, and that matters." Months later, When Emily stood in the living room helping Liam with his homework, laughing as he proudly spelled his name wrong, Daniel felt something loosen inside his chest. A tightness he hadn't realized he'd been carrying.